Jason, Mike, the escape room guys. We are going to do a little video interview about Five Wits' adventure called Espionage.
So a couple weeks ago, we were at Five Wits' soft opening in Ballston Quarter, over in Ballston in Arlington, Virginia. And they invited us in to check out some of their adventures. And we started off with Espionage, and we've actually played it 3 times now. Yeah, 3 times.
3 times.
And I think our best score was a
99.
99.
No, that was
97.
97.
Yep, got a 97. But we'll go into some of the review about that because...
As this is an adventure, it's also automated, so the entire game does not really lend itself to our normal typewritten blog style review. So we're going to follow essentially that piece by piece, and it's obviously we're not going to grade it as we would online, but we're going to just get into it and give you pretty much the same information you would find there. Just again, it doesn't really lend itself to a proper written review. So let's just get started on the story.
Sure. So you are members of, well, the part of the story is a little weird because you're told that you potentially could be double agents as part of this espionage adventure. So you are members of a group called...
Don't look at me, I can't remember.
think it's Cabal. And then, no.
There's Cabal, and then there's a global corporation entity. I think it was GCI. Does that sound familiar?
Something like that.
I can't remember the acronym, but PCMCIA. People can't remember history acronyms.
And we're rambling now. So anyway, so you are being brought into to try to crack into this safe house where Cabal, I think Cabal is the evil ones, are trying to take over the world, arms trading and things like that. So that's the first part of your game, is you have to infiltrate the safe house.
And as you progress through, and we'll talk about how the automation comes in a little bit later, as you progress through, you have a set number of tasks in basically a set amount of time. Mm-hmm. As you go through the game, the mission becomes which team do you want to join. Here's where the double agent part comes in. So you ultimately get to choose which team you join, which gives you a different ending in this instance for this adventure. There's at least 3 endings. I forget. There's definitely at least 2.
There's multiple endings.
There's multiple endings.
Because you can be good or bad, but you can have the best scenario or the worst scenario of each. So that's kind of a unique thing with Five Wits, is that their endings, like there's multiple potential endings based on the choices that you make throughout the room. So it's kind of a little bit like a choose your own adventure, but that's copyrighted. So. But it lends itself to that same way of pathways through the room.
There's also a bunch of Easter eggs that you don't know how many per room there are or what exactly there are. They never told us which ones they were because we've never actually gotten all of them. So they didn't want to ruin the surprise for us.
And I don't know how that's related to secrets, if they're the same thing.
Oh, I think they are. Yeah, I think secrets, Easter eggs, whatever.
So interesting new things to figure out while you're in the room. So now that we've given you the overall background as to how an adventure at Five Wits works, we'll talk about the room itself.
So there's some interesting stuff in there depending on the scenario. And as we said, we played 2 of their 3 adventures so far. And this one is more technology oriented, based on you're essentially stealing missiles. Mm-hmm. That's the quick and dirty version of it. So there's a lot of tech involved, and the things you have to do are more tech centric and related to that. So when you start the game, there's I think 3 things to do before you are moved into the second area.
Right, and those puzzles, and they are puzzles because they are things that you have to figure out, and the faster you figure things out, the faster you can progress through the room, which ideally would increase your scoring percentage at the end of the game. But the puzzles do learn, so the one puzzle that I worked on, it's a fun puzzle, but there's really no rhyme or reason or pattern to go through it. You just have to go through and
you have to figure out at least what the pattern is, and then when you replay it, the pattern basically stays the same, but it's a different actual
proceed,
pattern.
You have to We should not be shaking the table. You should. So that's one of the difficult things about the puzzle is you can get to a certain point, but then really at that point it's a coin toss as to which direction you go. Yeah. But if you keep messing up the pattern, then the puzzle eventually will learn, and as you get to a certain point, it actually says that you've succeeded, so that you can continue on with the game.
Yeah, which is why these games are only 30 minutes max. They lead you through. There's one in there that we were never able to successfully solve every single time.
Yeah,
and each time, I don't personally think it's possible, but I didn't have enough time to play with it. So it pushes you through, and just the storyline that you hear throughout the game that's coming through the speaker system just gives you something
continue on
to make you move. So then you just keep on going, and you get the next set of puzzles or tasks. They're really, let's call them tasks, I think is more accurate. So then you just get the next series of tasks to do until you get to that point where you can choose a side.
So we did go through, and we did, in the 3 times we went through, we chose one side twice and one other side once. I don't know how the game really changed at that point, because certain things happened when we did one point, but certain things didn't happen another point. So we thought that we failed the room, but then we ended up with a higher score than the first time we ran through it. So
yeah, that's right.
That's something that I would like to see more is built into their system as to how you got the score that you did.
Yeah, maybe just some, here's a progression with the goals for each section, and then checks and X's. I mean, something simple, just green and red. The
one puzzle towards the end of Espionage requires a lot of group work and teamwork. We're not going to give it away, but it's a lot of fun, especially when you have people running around. Like, we did figure out some ways to maybe cheat it.
I can give a hint. There's an app for it. That's essentially what it was, which is why I loved it, because I have the app.
So there you go. There's a hint. You may
figure it out,
delve
people.
into Jason's mind, but you may never.
Don't do that.
Never come
if you've played Psychonauts, don't do that.
There you go. So that was they were cool. They were a lot of fun. The puzzles were fun to play. I can definitely see how families going into this, people who have never done an adventure like this, would have a good time.
One of our team of Disturbed friends actually had a good point that these particular adventures are better suited for corporate team building than a standard escape room.
I would definitely agree.
And I think we all agreed with that when he said it in the room after. I forget it when he said it, but definitely said that, and we totally agree. It's definitely something worth taking your team to do, because there's really no way to fail.
Right, but going back to our rubric, so there was a lot of diversity in the puzzles that were in the room. Some of them seemed harder than others, but we never knew until we were forced to move on. Some of them we did complete, other ones we were forced to move on.
You'll know based on the audio cues whether or not you completed it.
Right, but one of the other parts of our rubric is the flow, cohesiveness, and the uniqueness. So things are really unique. The flow generally worked really well because you were forced to move on at whatever point you needed to. And then cohesiveness,
I'd say mostly, like we said, there were some things we just didn't understand how we were progressing. So like that one puzzle we said we failed every time. I'd still like to see it done. Mm-hmm. But I would also like to know how the scores are compiled. I have no idea how we got a 96, a 96, and a 97. No clue.
And a 93, I think, was the first time we went through.
93, 96, 97.
Right.
But no idea. That's my biggest gripe with Espionage.
But there is a lot of uniqueness in here. So there are puzzles that test your observation. There are other ones that test your dexterity. There are other ones that
definitely test your teamwork and communication.
Correct. So that, going back to the corporate atmosphere, I think that does work pretty well there. So that is pretty much it, I think, for
that's all
Espionage.
The stuff that we would normally talk about that's graded on our blog posts. So just some other stuff about the room. Like we said, there is no game master, there's no walkie-talkies, there's no two-way radios or anything in the room. It's all automated, fully, I almost said CG. It's totally not CG. It's full it's people on camera filming their parts. So it's pretty cool and very, very well done.
And it does have its blessing and curse because since it is automated, it's going to move you through at a certain point.
Yeah.
But there are also points where you're going to sit there and wait while the automation goes on and on. So in the first part of the room, you have to wait to be told some of the backstory and what to do. And you can't just start searching the room like you would an escape room. You're not supposed to call them escape rooms because they're adventures.
Since you bring that up, one of the things you have to do to get out of that first room, I was punching things into the thing to get us through before I realized it was even lit up to start trying.
Right. So
and that was because it was like at least 30 seconds of hearing the guy talk as part of the adventure, pushing you through, when essentially it's the system is open for you to start doing it.
So and that's also a good point because in this case, like brute force, and we call brute force as in like having 3 digits to a combination and then just scaling the last one to try to just pop it open versus solving it. That won't help you here because something will not activate until a certain period of time in the room. So if you've solved everything and you can move on, great. But if you're over at a part of a room and something's not been activated, then there's no way for you to move forward.
Just wait for things to light up when you think you have to do something else. That's a key indicator in espionage specifically.
Yep. So we would like to give a shout out to Dawn, who was our host for that evening. She was great. Like the passion behind what she does and running it. You can see that in the interview that she did with Jason. But we'd like to thank her for hosting us. And that is Espionage. We'll be back to you soon with our review of Tomb.
See ya.
See ya.